Hi, Happy New Year to all of you who are our followers and who will be faithful to continuing to understand this fascinating world of the Puerto Rico economy. We have entitled our first capsule of the year, or rather the second one, but really the most important one after all this New Year's celebration is this capsule, and we have entitled it Risky and Challenging 2023. We'll start with the first graph of the global world, and that's the forecast of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, that forecast for the world growth of this year is 2.7%. That's in real terms, so discounting inflation. But let's look at different areas in the world. Say, for instance, on the left-hand side, you have Canada with 1.5% real growth. That's nothing to be jumping about, but at least it's positive growth. Same thing for the US, it's scarcely 1%. For Puerto Rico, 0.4%. The Puerto Rico Planning Board has forecasted more or less 0.4 also, and the Promesa Oversight Board has forecasted for this fiscal year 0.9%. But again, those forecasts are old, so we still have to wait and see what all these events in the global macro world are going to be impacting Puerto Rico. In South America, it's on average for this area is 1.7%, and we have really a lot of activity there, not necessarily positive. We've seen all this coup or attempted coup, same as in January 6th of 2021 for the US. Well, in Brazil, the ousted President Bolsonaro has also refused. He's extending the same lies as President Trump regarding that it was they stole the elections from him. So a lot of turmoil there. We've seen the migration still continuing from Haiti, from Venezuela, from Cuba. So that migratory wave continues. Imagine coming all the way from Venezuela, back in that cone, all the way up through that Isthmus of Panama, through Mexico border. Imagine all those jungles, all those risks that all those people are really willing to take, even with children, small children, in the hope of having a better place and asylum in the US. Let's go to Europe to see if things are better. Well, they're not. In terms of Europe, overall 0.5% growth, and they're expecting more or less that economic recession because of the war in US and Ukraine. They continue, and certainly it is a tough time. For Russia, it's negative 2.3%. For China, positive news, 4.4%, but for them it's not that great news because they used to grow at a clip of 10%. So they're just opening up this economy, and we'll talk more about this in the second graph. And then finally, Africa seems to be doing much better, 3.7% growth. But overall, it's a slow growth in terms of the outlook for the world, and some areas with the outlook of recessions. And certainly the US is not out of the woods, and neither is Puerto Rico. This second graph is China's real growth. It's from the Q3 of 2019 through the forecast that it is even to the first quarter of 2024. And notice that in 2021, the second quarter of 2021, China grew at a clip of 18.3%, and that was even during the pandemic. So it's interesting how they did grow, but thereafter it continued, especially with this no opening after COVID, zero COVID. Well, then they could open. Even one person with COVID, that would entail closing up either the factory or the area where this COVID appeared. But the forecast seems to be more or less at a clip of 5.2%, 7%, and even that 10.5% that you're seeing there in the red bars from 2023, 2024. And that is a risk also for the entire world, because as China opens up, they're going to be demanding more oil, even if they're buying it from Russia. They also buy from other places in the world, and that will keep pressure on the oil markets, and the oil prices may not be going down as heavily as some analysts were expecting. So what you're seeing there is China opening up. Yes, good for more manufacturing returning, but that's also exerting pressure in terms of commodities, in terms of construction materials. So the good news is also bad news for the rest of the world in terms of oil prices, as you see in this next graph. Again, the purple bars from 2008 on an annual basis, when it was $97, the Brent price of oil, the barrel of oil, and then it went up to $111, and it's been even higher than that on a quarterly basis. But at least as 2022 ended, more or less it was $101 per barrel, and expected then during this a range from $83 through $115. And again, that range will be a function of what's happening with the rest of the world, and especially China's opening, which is, again, that's the wild joker that we are expecting. How fast and how quickly they will start opening up the economy, and the pressure that it will imply. And as price of oil increases, so the next graph depicts what's happening in terms of overall prices, in terms of inflation, be it the US, the blue line, and Puerto Rico, the red line, and that is again on an annual basis. Say, for instance, in 2008, Puerto Rico had a consumer price index of 4.5%, and the US had it lower, 3.7%. Moving fast forward, as the forecast for 2023 for the US is more or less 8%, and for Puerto Rico is about 6.5%. But again, all of this it could be a range. Again, we know that coffee prices are going up, that plantains, bananas, food prices are still going to be high, and not only it's because of all this opening up of China or the increase in oil prices, it's also the weather. We've been having droughts, we've been having floods, especially in the US, but it's also in Latin America. So all that will be impacted. Food crops. We still have the war, Russia, Ukraine, and that is a basket for wheat as well as oil. And so definitely I do not expect those prices to come tumbling down. And finally, it's the Fed funds rate in this graph, which is what the markets are expecting, that maybe with the consumer price index of December in the US, if it is slightly lower than it was in November or even the year before, then that is good news, because it might tame some of the step increases in the Fed funds rate that Chairman Powell has vowed to continue as long as inflation has not been achieved to the goal of 2%. Maybe 2% is too low, too ambitious, but maybe, hey, if you are in the range of 3%, that is good news. So we have to wait and see. But meanwhile, interest rates are going to remain high. And for those of you who have credit cards, especially in Puerto Rico, since we live beyond our means, especially based on credit, those credit cards, many of them have rate increases up to almost 27%. So as an individual, my advice is plan your purchases, plan for the future, because prices are going to continue and these interest rates are not going to come tumbling down immediately. In terms of the business, it's the same thing. So you expect those interest rates to be charging you more for those commercial loan businesses, for those credit lines. So you have to plan and see what is your forecast in terms of economic growth. What is your strategic planning for this year and next years? Because it's only with planning that you can sort of moderate some of these risks. And in terms of these interest rates, it's going to continue impacting mortgages, construction of housing, it's the infrastructure, and of course, for Puerto Rico, it means that we still have not renegotiated the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority bonds. that debt, and so I think those bondholders are going to become even more greedy and say, I want a higher interest rate. So what risky 2023 means for all of us at this 20,000 altitude is that it's going to be still a tough year, but only with planning and careful selection of your purchases and expenses is that you can really tame some of these adverse effects. Puerto Rico needs to get its act together. Don't expect that strategy of continuing with being rescued with federal funds that's going to continue, or even that these funds are going to materialize soon into projects that will engage in economic activity. We need a public policy, a public economic policy that is integrated, it's coherent, and we don't see that. We just see patches which are disjointed, and that's not the way to grow this economy. Don't forget, if you like our economic capsules, to go to the voice of Heidie Calero, give us a like to those capsules that you like, and subscribe so that you receive our notifications. Don't forget, this is a service of Puerto Rico Economic Pulse, and that the economy is all of us. Thank you.